here with the monthly Alyssa Faden chat. Thanks for coming as always, Alyssa. We were talking before we went on the air about Thanksgiving stuff. Where in Louisiana? So you said you were in Louisiana. So what was your route? You went England to Louisiana to California.
Not
was that?
quite, no.
Okay.
So I came over to Boston. I had a friend in Boston. So it was a fairly easy, safe first stop, and I stayed with her for a short while. She got me kind of acclimatized to America and that type of thing. And God's honest truth now, that she lined up some job interviews for me. She lined up an apartment for me, but it was like the same job that I had in England. It was like, okay, so it was an apartment on a shoreline, which, like, oh my God, yeah, please. But it started to feel like I've just moved country and just got England with American accents. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I do.
it was beautiful, and I love the people in the northeast in that Boston area, very, very much so, very fond memories. But I was like, you don't move 3,000 miles to
Well, you
get
just went
the
from
same
old
experience.
England to New England. You literally went from England to England. You know.
Exactly, exactly. So I'm like, if you're going to move country, you should feel like you've moved country. You know what I mean?
Well,
And I had
Louisiana will do that.
well, and I had a friend. She was a virtual friend at the time. You know, we used to play poker and stuff like that back in the day online. And she was like, "Come down here, you know, to come visit." And I'm like, Louisiana. Now you have to imagine Louisiana. I'm sure to most Americans, Louisiana is pretty foreign, right? I mean, it's pretty different. There's a culture shock there, especially if you're English. And I'm like, screw it. Let's go to Louisiana. Let's go visit Louisiana. And I stayed there 6 years. That's the
Wow.
effect that it had on me.
Where in Louisiana were you? Were you in New Orleans?
Lake Charles, which is the
Oh, Lake Charles.
southwest corner. Yeah.
Well, I lived in Houston, so Lake Charles was
Oh, we're
was not
neighbors,
close, but I
man.
mean, it was the first. Yeah, it was like your first stop. They had those casinos on the water. I remember taking my grandmother too. So, yeah, I've been through Lake Charles a couple times. Yeah, I imagine that must have been much different. And then from there, you went to California.
No, I never went to
Oh,
California.
I thought you were in California now.
No, I'm actually in Portland, Oregon, my friend.
Oh, you're in Oregon. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, so you went from Louisiana to Oregon, or were there any more stops?
No, I did. So what happened is one day, and I had, by the way, I had life-changing experiences in Louisiana. Like, seriously, those little milestones in life where you go, that's cool. Like, I was on a Mardi Gras crew. I was part of the court. I had the big, huge, 15 feet wide costumes and stuff. You know,
Wow.
I went all. I fished for crabs with a turkey neck on the end of a piece of string, with a little alligator or whatever swimming past in the bayou. I did all of. I had the cowgirl hat and the snakeskin boots, and I did the line dancing on the
Did you shoot
bayou.
any Nutra?
I went all in, man. I went all in. And honestly,
Nice.
best time of my life. Best people of my life, without a doubt. But there was a point where, you know, I was like, okay, time to move on. Time to, because I actually did want to go to California. When I first came to America, I was like, I want to go to California. But like a lot of my thought processes are not based upon the actual location, but more what it's like as an outsider. So, you know, you Starsky and Hutch, Chips, Kojak. This is the type of shit I was brought up on. So it's like, I want to go to Los Angeles. And like, well, every other American on the planet is going, no, you don't. And so I visited. I did visit it, and I did the whole touristy thing. But I'm like, yeah, this isn't for me. So there was just a point in my life where I was like, let's move on. And it was literally a pin in the map. And let's just go somewhere else in the country. And Portland ended up being the choice.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned those shows because here in New York, so I was I don't know when I became a Monty Python fan, but I was a big Monty Python fan from when I was a little kid, and back when I was growing up here in New York City, our public broadcasting, our PBS local PBS station had Monty Python. You know, they had bought the rights to to do it, but they wouldn't just put it on TV. They put it as in part of this British comedy package that they had, and it was the last one. It was like the what do you call it? The end of the when you're playing tug of war. You've got the anchor. It was the anchor for this thing. So it was at like 11:30 at night. So I think it was on like Fridays. And so I would stay, or I would try to stay up. Sometimes I wouldn't make it. Try to stay up, and I would put on PBS, and I would sit through this British comedy hour, just kind of trying to wait to get to Monty Python. But it gave me exposure to all these different shows. And I remember finally, I think I was in college, I started meeting some British people, and I started kind of asking them about these programs because, okay, I'd watched Monty Python, and I just assumed these other British programs, even though some of them I didn't care for much, but I assume that this is British program, like, this is the Chips of Great Britain, or they were all kind of comedies, but right, these are the Cheers of Britain, everything. And I would rattle off these names of shows, and these people would look at me like I was just a nut job. It was like, why are you? These weren't the Cheers of Great Britain. It was more like the Mama's Family of Great Britain. They shows like Butterflies, and I was like, why did they ship us these horrible shows? I was sitting through when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, just trying to keep my eyes open till I could get to Monty Python at the end. Because at that point, we started to get VCRs, but we didn't really have VCRs. There was certainly no on demand. So it was basically, how to get there. But it was funny because that's kind of the image I had of a lot of British culture came from these, I guess, actually not very good sitcoms.
Do you remember any of the names by any chance?
Well, there was two that I liked, and the actor he'd actually been on stuff, but there was one. It was actually a set. There was one that was like the Rise and Fall of Reginald Perrin, and then there was the Fall and Rise of Reginald Perrin.
Oh shit!
I really
I have not heard that in years. I have forgotten about that one.
Yeah, they played them both. They played both series. So I got Rise and Fall and Rise, and those I liked a lot. But there was Butterflies was one. There was another one. I can't even remember. Most of them were very forgettable, but Reginald Perrin I always remembered, and I actually have BritBox now, and I tried to find Reginald Perrin, and they don't have it. Shame on you, BritBox.
I forgot about that. In fact, everything you just mentioned, I had forgotten about, and I have dozens in my head, but I'm like, oh yeah, that was a thing.
That was a thing, but that's what they were shipping over here. I don't know who was foisting this on the poor American public broadcasting center, or these are your shows. You got Monty Python, then we're going to hand you a bunch of garbage that you're going to play, and if you can sit through all that garbage, then you can get to Monty Python. But
Reginald definitely on B lists. They were. Now you've mentioned the Rise and Fall. I'm like, holy heck, I need to rewatch this. But it was definitely a B lister on the British comedy stage.
Yeah,
The Rise and Fall is not on there, man. It isn't.
No,
So yeah, we probably shipped you some.
So they chose. I'm sure someone was on the other side was going, "Oh, Monty Python, yeah, of course." But here are these other ones that are really good, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't know." And on here, I thought, like, boy, I guess this was what British humor is. But the people are like, "Nope, it's not like that at all. We just gave you all of our shows."
America shipped back to Britain some good stuff in my day. Because we got Cheers, we got Taxi, we got Fraser, we got Soap, we got all your primo ones. We got all of them. We never got Seinfeld for some reason. Maybe they were asking too much or something. But we got them all. And on Friday night, my mom and dad would go out to work. I would babysit my sister. And I would sit there and I would watch these American comedies all night, just like you.
And that's what I was doing. But we got your garbage. We sent you A stuff. You sent us like your D stuff. Just with Monty Python, trying to hide behind everyone's love for Monty Python. That was the thing. And then what was awful was they lost. I guess the licensing whatever ran out and they couldn't afford it. So then they had this one weekend where they were going to lose the rights to broadcast it, and they ran the whole thing over a weekend. And I tried to stay up basically all night, Saturday and Sunday, to try to catch all the episodes I hadn't seen, and then it was gone. But it was fun for a while it lasted. Before I forget, how is your Patreon deathmatch series going? Your tournament of champions and or chickens or whoever where are we now in your tournament?
Oh, going great. By the way, I just want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat. Hi, just You rock. You really rock. So yeah, the death match. The death match is over, man. We had the final last week, and I went
Oh,
all in on this guy. So we had like 8 competitors. They were the champion of champions. They had the same units that they'd had in the intermediary rounds, and I gave them something like 4,000 to 5,000 units each. Like so,
whoa.
there was 40,000 units on the battlefield, and I changed the battlefield too. It was almost like some kind of Greek area with hills and stuff, with this massive fortress in the middle of it. And I was like, go. There were so many units, it was ridiculous. And we have a winner. We have a
Oh,
winner.
so who came out on top? Was it one of the novelty factions, or was it real warriors came out? Because before it was like chickens or something, or penguins or something that had won the
Well,
battle.
Penguins were a finalist. So if I
Oh my
remember
gosh!
correctly, we had Persian warriors. We had guys with two-handed swords, wild men. But we also had we had knights that were in there. So we definitely had a nice slew of the regular units. But we also had kangaroos, penguins, and like this Cthulhu creature with big, huge tentacles that I
Oh,
called
please tell me that
Snotlings.
Cthulhu one.
It did.
Yes, good.
So Darren Moria Smith was the patron who had the snotlings, as I call them. And I've been in communication with Darren. He is in receipt of his Steam gift card. And
Oh,
you know what?
nice.
He doesn't care about that because he has just bragging rights. He's so happy that he
Absolutely.
won. Yeah.
So, are you going to do another one? Is there going to be? Is this going to be a seasonal
I
attorney?
think so. No, we're definitely doing it. So we've spoken about doing more of the Ultimate Combat Simulator. Basically, each patron has a faction. That was fun. I like doing them. I think we'll do them again. But there's also a game out there. I want to say Marble Madness, but it's not Marble Madness. It's something else. But it's basically you put a bunch of marbles on a track. You build the track, and it just races to a room. But you can
Ooh.
build the track yourself, and it has little elevators and jumps and stuff like that. And so I could put all of my patrons on, each one being a marble, and go.
Oh,
And
that's
see which
intriguing.
marble gets to the end. So I think we're going to do that one too. We're going to mix it up a little bit.
I wonder. I wonder if it lets you do some different properties of marbles, or whether it'll end up being kind of like in horse racing, where the what position you are on the track can be super important. If you're on the inside against the railing, that could be trouble. If you're on the outside, that might. I wonder. I wonder what keeps it. If there's any advantages to where you start on such a thing, or is it just going to
Not
be
from what
luck
I've
of the
seen,
draw?
but you have to have the right track, right? So if you just have
Mm.
a straight run going down, and there's the end, sure, that's absolutely the people at the front have an advantage. But what you do is you have little jumps, you have these little pegboards, you have these little elevators that are going up, you have little sort of loop-de-loops, and you have these little dividers. You build in all of these little obstacles to, in the end, who knows? And people are coming off the track at points, so they're out. So you have no idea. You can be at the back, doesn't matter, because it's all about
I
how
would be
do
in
you
the
hit these
back.
obstacles.
I remember playing kind of racing games. I haven't played them in a while, but on the Xbox, I used to play. I think Forza was the name of the racing game, and when I was playing online with different people, you didn't want to be in the front because you were just getting murdered. I mean, the people next to you were just going to bang. You really wanted to be in the back. Let that whole scrum happen in the first turn, and then hopefully you can clear the wreckage, and then have kind of a free and clear run. So I would actually want to be somewhat in the back. Have you seen Squid Game? It's
Mhm.
the
Yep,
so
yep.
I don't want to spoilers, but in one of those games where they're trying to strategize, right? Do you want to be in the front or the back? That one where it was like they had to pick the jackets with the numbers on it. Like I think could be some strategizing in there, like where exactly you want to be. Uh, so you got the map behind you. So let's get into where are you now on the Gaslight map.
Well, as you might be able to actually use this stuff, so I've started adding labels to it. I've got the board. So for everyone watching, I'm basically drawing 1890s Gaslight London for Chaosium, and it's a huge map. And they weren't planning on this to begin with. You know, they were doing a 2-page spread, but the detail that I'm putting into this, the love that I'm putting into this, they're going to do a poster. And so
Nice.
they've asked me to do labels for every single street.
Okay, so I
And
know you had talked about that. That was like one of your sort of one of your things you were thinking about trying to do, but now it's official. You're going all in on road labels, street labels.
yeah. And I regret even offering it. I genuinely do. Because even look, the segment behind me is a quarter of the map. It's a quarter. And just look at how many. Look at the little streets. Don't look at the main roads. Look at the side roads. Look at the alleys. And I have like historical resources that give me the names for those roads and alleyways. And but I'm looking at it and I've started the process and I'm like, I really don't want to add labels to all of these. But that's what I'm doing right now. So wee.
So so I guess a couple of things here. So are you going to? I presume you're not going to actually draw the labels. You're just going to use some kind of font and type them in, or you're
Well,
going
yeah,
full
no,
Monty?
I'm using InDesign, and Miss J Maps is in the chat. Miss J, yes, it's True Madness. It seems to be appropriate, right, for the Chaosium map. But so what I'm doing is I've drawn this in Photoshop, but Photoshop does not handle fonts very well at all. Not a lot of fonts, like the River Thames. That's all. In fact, let me get out the way. River.
Or do you want to share your screen like you did last time and put a bigger
Yeah, I
version of
can
the
do
map
that.
on?
Sure. Let's do. Well, in fact, let me bring it up first, and I'll show you what I've done on this thing. And
I don't remember how we did it last time, but last time you were able to get up
we're
there. If
gonna figure
you
this out, but
remember,
I haven't hit share yet. So let me just open up.
got an
Actually, let me open
itch.
up this PDF because why the
Yeah,
hell not?
PDFs work.
And we're gonna zoom out. Can I zoom out? Let me just my computer is gonna go super slow.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. Yeah, Photoshop is definitely not built for the amount of fontage that you will want to be putting on that map. For
No,
sure.
no. So I think what I'm gonna do is let's do a screen share right here, and we will share this one. But so, do we see this?
Yep, it's coming. I'm gonna get it. There we go. It is shared.
All right, so you see the Gaslight London map right here. So this is
Yep.
kind of so here's what I'm doing. This is the Photoshop version right here, which sounds kind of weird, but Photoshop does not handle a lot of individual labels on its own, text labels. It starts to barf for some reason. So I do feel confident about the River Thames that I've got here, and we've got these river-like labels in here. By the way, the font itself and the actual treatment of the font, I'm using a historical reference map for these. So I've got the actual font and the spacing between letters and the size of the letters vertically and horizontally. I'm actually trying to dial these in as close to historical as I can, and even the placement on the map, to be honest with
Wow.
you. But if we start labeling like these individual streets, Photoshop is just going to die. It's
Yeah,
just
because
going
he
to
puts
die.
each one on its own layer, and I think it'll just go
Yeah,
mad at some
exactly.
point.
It explodes. I almost killed the Teagle Manor map for Fog God Games because I brought in something like 1,000 labels into my map, and my computer, I swear, died. It just died in front of me, and almost the whole project had just ended in that moment. It was just overkill. Photoshop can't handle too many layers. It can't
So what are you
handle
gonna do?
a
You're gonna
thousand
bring
layers.
it in. You're gonna bring it into InDesign and then just put it as sort of lock it in as an image, and then just start dragging your labels
Yeah, so
in
exactly.
InDesign.
So what I've started doing in InDesign is so this is in InDesign right here. And so I've got the things like Church Street and Battersea Bridge and Albert Road, and I'm kind of and Cheyenne Walk. I'm kind of dialing in not only the font and the spacing and everything. I can then use InDesign to label all of these, and then I can export it from InDesign into like a Acrobat, like a PDF. I can export it into other formats, but it will include this Photoshop file. The actual map is a Photoshop file that's embedded within it. So it's kind of got Photoshop over here, it's got labels over here. And even if I have both of them open at the same time, it's less stressful on my system, which is kind of weird. So I'm going to
That
do
is
all of
weird.
the labels over in InDesign.
How many labels do you think there are? You've got a rough. You think you have a rough estimate? I'm looking at
Man, I mean, look,
the
what did
main.
this
This.
say?
I mean,
I honestly, I think that I've got to do the major roads, right? They want me to do the major roads, even just for the book itself. I'm not sure they're going to show because you could see the bridge down in the bottom here. I'm not sure they're going to show. I'm not sure any of the labels are going to show effectively, to be honest with you. Not in a 2-page spread. But I'm going to
what do
do
you
the
think of the
major
poster?
roads. The poster, I'm going to do all of the roads. I'm going to do all of the highlighted roads, these secondary roads, and probably some of the alleyways, but not everyone, because it's just going to end up being a sea of black, and I'm not sure it's going to bring any value to it.
Or are
Like
those
me
yellow roads?
labeling
Those
an
are highlighted.
alleyway.
Yeah. So the yellow are the highlighted roads. What is the purpose of the highlighting? Is that just, are they ones that are specifically called out in the material, or what do they
No,
denote?
so they actually did. I've got something like 12 source maps from the period, and most of them do this. They highlight the major roads. So I think these are major roads of the time. So these are
Mm.
definitely getting labeled. And then I'm going to treat the others as secondaries, like the other big roads. I'm treating them as secondaries, but I'm probably going to label those as well. Um, yeah, and then after that, poster, I think. And then obviously things like Regent Park, Hyde Park, they're going to have to get on map labels as well.
I mean, it looks gorgeous. When did you end up deciding to do your grid? Because I remember we talked about that last time when you were kind of working out how is your grid system. It looks like it's hard for me to tell on the sides, but it looks like you've got the labels kind of along the border. I've noticed when you've zoomed in that you have the grid.
Yeah. So you and I did speak about this on our last show. And everyone watching right now, if you haven't seen that particular chapter, go back and watch it. So there's a couple of things right here. One is this border. I actually picked it up as a combination of two other maps from the period, and it's a grid, right? And one of the resource maps put these labels on the inside. One of them put them on the outside. I like them on the inside because it does give some crop room. If I put them on the outside, I'm basically losing my crop. Um, and I like this ghosted out sort of bit. So I kind of still have the map, but I have the labels too. But we saw basically all of them did some kind of coordinate system, like a letter and a number. And so I picked up on that. I've also picked up on the style, just a nice simple style. They all were mostly simple for the period. So I picked up on that. And then I just have A1 or B3. And they would actually reference these then for like buildings in that area, and Chaosium is going to use that. They said that they will actually be able to reference like B3 in the book itself for where something might be located, which is kind of cool.
Oh, nice. That is cool.
Then for the map, for the grid itself, and this comes from an actual period map from 1890 or close to 1890, and so this font is a combination of 2 fonts from period maps. I hand drew this, and I love the way it came out. I really do. I'm in love with this font here. So, and Stafford, obviously, for Greg Stafford, the Origins of Cthulhu, I felt that was appropriate, little nod to him. But this whole format and the language that's going on here was from one of the period maps. It's almost like a little key, but the whole thing is basically just a title. But on that period map, it spoke about divided into half-mile squares and circles. And I thought that, I mean, you don't hear that language nowadays. They don't do that shit nowadays. Half-mile squares and circles. It's like so 1890s. I had to do that. So each of these squares is half a mile. And there's also circles on here. So the distance between there and there is half a mile. And they just go out like that. And it's actually kind of ingenious because you can be standing like around here, look out towards this point over here and go, oh yeah, that's about half a mile right there. You know, it just gives you
very much like an urban hex crawl, just with squares and circles.
And circles. Exactly. And then they had this at the bottom, which kind of really sort of, you know, crosses the T, dots the I, so to speak. Oh, and something else I'm going to have to do, Todd. You see these board schools, country courts, and police courts. So a lot of these black squares fall into one of these categories, or churches and chapels. So I'm going to have to go through a lot of these and make sure I've got these symbols marked on them too. Yeah.
Good luck with that. I do not envy the going through to check to make sure everything's in the right spot part of the job. Is someone at Chaosium going to do that, or you're going to have to do that yourself, or do you have somebody you're going to hand this off to check the work and say, please make sure all my roads are in the right place and that I got all my labels? Who's going to map proofread, so to speak, your cartography? Do they have a team that's going to sift through with magnifying glasses and make sure everything's where it should be?
I don't know how they're going to do this one. So, you know, I've actually done 2 maps for Chaosium, but one I'm not allowed to talk about in detail. But the other one is a modern map. And so if I gave them the modern map, they were able to look at the equivalent modern, let's say on Google, and they were able to check all of my labels and check the spelling and check everything else. And there was a little bit of back and forth to correct some things. Good. That one is finished. And we will talk about that as soon as the NDA is lifted, Todd. But then this one, so this one's 1890s. I've got my source materials. I'm happy to give them my source materials. But then is someone going to check 500 labels?
That's what I'm saying. I don't want that job. I think the other thing, though, is probably even period a bit if there are some typos. Because I imagine if you look at enough of these maps, you will find some potential spelling errors or just maybe even variant spellings of things as places. Maybe their names changed
these are scans too. Like there's a scan of a high-res map, let's say in like the University of Scotland. But this is something that's over 100 years old now. And so like there's creases on the lines and things like that. And it's like, well, what do you do about that? Because I can't actually read this. And it may not be
right. And it may not even be there now.
Right. And I had one of those last night, actually, the Cheyenne Walk. On one of my resource maps, it looks like a Chevney Walk. There was no little bottom of the Y. And I was like, Chevney doesn't sound right. So I'm off Googling, you know, like to see if it's out. And it's still there today, thank the God. But yeah.
Jeb Gordon says, a mere 500 labels. That's not much of a proofreading job.
Sounds like Jeb is volunteering for the task.
I know, right? Yeah, that's a lot. It looks amazing. I've been seeing your updates on Facebook, whatever, and it looks super impressive. So how many hours is this?
We're at about
Where
100 now, just shy. Um, I think we're going to hit 150.
I mean, the labels are going to take a while. I mean, so what is your process? I mean, this is just kind of curiosity, but I mean, what is your process for doing them? Are you just going to take your, I guess, your most complete source map and just put it on, what are you going to overlay the scan on top and just write it in? Because I mean, even just, because I assume there might be some maps that, because I know you're saying because you're using maps from different years and some places don't exist on some maps because they a later map and it was torn down, or a older map and it wasn't built up yet. So you might have to shuffle several references and, like you said, creases and whatnot. Like just getting most of those labels in there might be tough, or maybe I guess if you're just doing the major stuff, that'll be easier. But I feel like that's at least I'm just drowning in how much time I think it would take me to go through and.
I am too. No, I am too. No, but so I'm still trying to figure this out. So I've played with putting a map behind my drawing so I could see like the streets lining up and things. But honestly, it kind of is making things worse because my drawing plus the age of the map can actually make reading some of them very, very difficult. So I have two monitors, obviously. And so I've taken to actually just having my resource off to one side. And I do have a map from 1890. So I have that off to one side. And what I've been doing is just panning that and looking at mine and basically writing the label in as I go. It's slow, but if I can hit the major roads, those in yellow. If I can hit the secondary roads, the wider ones that aren't highlighted, but they stick out on the map. If I can hit those at least, we're good. Anything after that, I think is just going to be, I don't know, just showing off madness or something at this point.
How big of a poster are they going to print out of this thing? And are there plans to sell it, or is it going to be part of a Kickstarter, or do you know how they're going to be doing that?
I don't know. So it would be completely wrong of me to even try and speculate. To be honest with you, maybe they are kickstarting. I honestly don't know at this point. I mean, it's Chaosium. Chaosium does tend to kickstart things. I don't know if this is on that list at all. And as for the final print size, again, unfortunately, I don't know. But I know they have an interest in doing something special more than just a fold out.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing. I can't wait to see more of it when it's finished. Are you going to PAX Unplugged, by the way? Are you doing any cons? Are you going anywhere? I'm going to be in PAX Unplugged.
Not until GaryCon. Not until GaryCon next year. I kind of made a decision that I didn't want to hit any cons until about GaryCon. So that'll be my first in.
When is GaryCon? That's what, in March or
March?
Wait, okay, it's March. Yeah, I got to see if I can get there. Someone said now that there are direct flights, because I remember when I looked at it, maybe it was pre-COVID, so a couple of years ago now. I could not find any direct flights and from the New York area, and it was all about you fly into Chicago and then you have to drive, and I was like, that's just too much of a pain. But I've heard now there are actually direct flights, so I'm gonna maybe try to go if I can work it out. PAX Unplugged is going to be my first con, and I'm super excited.
Nice.
Excited to go for that. But yeah, next year's going to be good.
Maybe look at North Texas Con.
That's another one I've heard of.
June, I think.
And that's in Dallas, right?
That's in
or just right around. Yeah. So how's your Call of Cthulhu game? Where's your gang at? Are you on your break yet?
We are not on our break, and we're going to see out the year on this one without a doubt. So for everyone watching, I'm a huge Call of Cthulhu fan. I run Call of Cthulhu when I go to conventions. I run Call of Cthulhu, even if it's in different periods, like Dark Ages or Cthulhu Invictus. I run Call of Cthulhu. That's my shtick, and I am running Masks of Nyarlathotep, and I have been since 2019, and my group is currently in Egypt, and they've been in Egypt for the last few months. And Call of Cthulhu, even if it's just a single game, is one of exploration and research as you find the clues on what is this about and what's going on. Then there's this middle note of, oh shit, I think we know what's going on. Then there's that little sort of chapter of, let's prepare for what's going on, because the final bit is like, oh my god, it's in my face. And my group, my group right now is in the let's prepare for what's going on. They're kind of, they know what is here. And I don't want to ruin it for anyone, so I'm not going to tell you what's going on in Egypt. But my group has been having a whale of a time. It's been a lot of fun. They spent the whole last session exploring inside the Bent Pyramid. And that was a
Oh,
lot of fun.
nice. And so what kind of stuff in the, just I guess more generally speaking, when we're in the prep phase, we're getting the materials, does that tend to be, is it just kind of now we have a shopping list, or is there like they're in the Bent Pyramid because they need to retrieve the artifact that they think they will need for the whatever it is they're doing? Like what does the prep phase in Call of Cthulhu look like?
Well, so for Masks of Nyarlathotep, there were certain clues that lead you to certain events that have or are occurring in or around certain pyramids. So, for example, you arrive in Cairo and find out that there was a find in the pyramid of Mycerinus, which is the smallest of the Great Pyramids, where they found a sarcophagus. And the sarcophagus was stolen. And they don't know how it was even taken out of the pyramid because there were guards outside. So there, there's a clue, and the players can go and investigate and go inside the pyramid itself. So there's your kind of the leash to, come on, let's go inside the pyramid, and let's go from there. And then from my perspective, I gotta be honest with you, the actual book writing kind of does things like, and there was a room inside the pyramid where the sarcophagus was located. And that's it. That's your full pyramid write-up. That's it. There's no map. There's no indication of how you should even present the pyramid. And I'm not an Egyptologist. I'm a Romanophile, right? So I'm sitting there going, yeah, but what does the inside of a pyramid look like? What I need to
What kind of
understand.
hieroglyphics are there? Is there any signs of things that have happened? Anything distressed? Holes in the floor, or
what corridors am I
broken
dealing
walls?
with? What rooms am I dealing with? And here's the kicker, by the way: there's no hieroglyphics inside any of the pyramids.
Well, that I know. That's the whole mystery, right? That's why people are able to argue about what the Great Pyramid was for, because there's only that one. I think in the Great Pyramid, there's that it's that very controversial sort of painted on one single. I think there's one single glyph that's painted, and I think people, maybe it's even been proven now that it was some British Egyptologist that kind of painted that, because it doesn't really match the time period and stuff. But they were like, "Aha! Look, I found it!" And they're like, "What's that paint bucket behind your? What's that paint bucket behind your back?"
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
There were no sarcophagus found in them. There were no bodies found in these things. But so I'm sitting here like, and I've got to run this thing, and I feel like as a GM, you basically need to describe what you're seeing in mind's eye, right? Any room, any location, any building, any bar, any tavern. If you can see it, you can describe it. So here I am, and they'll say, and inside the Bent Pyramid there is a room, and I'll go, yeah, but how did it get there? I need to be able to describe this. So I ended up actually watching hundreds of hours of YouTube videos of people crawling around inside these pyramids. So I could understand what they look like. And I actually had a Facebook sort of follower say, oh, you should actually install Assassin's Creed because they have an exploratory mode and you can go inside the pyramids. I was like, that's cool. So I installed it, and I'm running around inside Assassin's Creed Origins, so I could walk around inside the pyramids. Spoiler alert, it's shit. And then, it's gamified. I mean, the scale is wrong. There's the corridors, everything's wrong because they want to make it a game, right? So that was, I had to throw that idea out.
So what is the? I suppose maybe it's impossible to say, but is the concept that you were supposed to just kind of abstract the pyramid away and just say, oh, you get to the pyramid and when you get to the sarcophagus, it's gone, kind of thing, or did they
Yeah,
mean it for it to be more exploratory?
yeah, maybe. I mean, Masks is known as a very sandbox-like environment, where as a keeper, as the GM, so to speak, you really need to be able to fill in the gaps yourself. You do. But this felt almost like that they could have done with an Egypt source book or something, to explain something. Even just give me a map. Give me a nice map in a semi sort of 3D. Let me see how the corridors line up. Because I ended up getting that offline or online, I suppose I should say. And that was enough for me to ad lib everything. Because a lot of these pyramids, like the entrance is like 3 feet by 3 feet. You're crawling down these things, or they're a shaft going down, and you're lowering yourself down a ladder, a wooden ladder that they've set up for tourists. And when you get into the room, these massive, very narrow, vaulted, like corbel ceilings, I think they call them, that go 30, 40 feet above your head, but it's a narrow room with this little tiny shaft on the other side that you're crawling along that shaft. Well, this ends up being so claustrophobic, and so dark, and you can imagine you've got this little sort of light as you're crawling along this little shaft with the weight of the pyramid on your shoulders. But honestly, partly through me describing this to the players as they were like going through this pyramid, one of the players was having a panic attack at the table. She was like, oh God, she wanted out. And that's exactly what you want in a Call of Cthulhu game.
And I was going to say, it's very thematic to this thing. So it's interesting that they chose not to engage with that, seeing as that it's very thematic.
I think they could have given a little bit, even if it was a sidebar of them, how to run the pyramids or where to find some resources, or just give me a map. I think because some of the pyramids feature in there, and this is what a multi-iteration now, what there've been like 2, 3, 4 versions of Masks over the last 40 years. I feel like that was one piece where they could have added a little bit more.
It may be time. It may be time for them to put in, I think, like you said, a sidebar will be good. It's just interesting because it seems like those locations could be very thematic and something that you would want to have the detail for. Like I can see some places, like, I don't know, if it was somebody's house, you just want to kind of say, well, here's what's in the house, and you can kind of hand wave the rest of it. But this is like a marquee spot, the Bent Pyramid. I mean, it's kind of one of those things I would think in the Egypt area you would want to sort of highlight. So interesting that they chose not to. But the other thing is those books are huge, and maybe it was just a matter of, you know what, we don't really have.
Right. Might be just a matter of space. For me, honestly, it was reading one of the sections that basically went along. Well, actually, it was about the whole sort of sarcophagus getting stolen outside of one of the pyramids, or from within one of the pyramids. And like, there's this section where it was like the police searched everywhere, and they did find a shaft in the outlying area, but nothing else. And me personally, because I'm not an Egyptologist, I was like, wait, they found a shaft? Hold on. You could almost imagine the tires going squee. Wait, hold on. And I was like, how do you find a shaft and not be fascinated by this? And it was that line that was like, I need to go off and research Egypt at this point. I need to understand the Giza Plateau because I'm not getting this throwaway line. Well, apparently the Giza Plateau has hundreds of shafts all over it. Some don't go anywhere. Some go into just tombs, and they're still discovering them today, over 100 years later. Well, I didn't know that reading this book. And I think I would have liked to have had something inside the book that gave me that clue as a clueless person, that the Giza Plateau is just awash with large and small temples, because I didn't know that either. And awash with ruins and shafts and tunnels, to the point where it's a honeycomb and we're still discovering things. Because then I would
it's a neat place.
I get it.
Yeah, it's a very neat spot. Do you get to go? Do they? Is it part of? Are the other pyramids? They play roles. I mean, you don't have to say what the roles are, but are they involved, or is the Bent Pyramid the extent of the party?
Some do. Some do, yeah. But they actually, I mean, this is not a spoiler. They stay away from the Great Pyramid because I think that'll be a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too trope. So they're hitting the other pyramids. The broken pyramid comes into it, the red pyramid comes into it. By the way, before all of this, because I didn't know that much about Egypt, I was like, what do you mean broken pyramid? What broken pyramid? What do you mean stepped pyramid? What do you mean red pyramid? I didn't know there were so many pyramids. It was actually news to my entire group that there's something like 160 pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah, they only mention the big three for the most part. And then maybe the bent pyramid comes in. It's like, look, here's that prototypical pyramid that didn't work right. And then they got it right.
Yeah. And that's one thing, by the way, I love about Call of Cthulhu. And I think for anyone with an element of cerebral cells connecting in their brain, it is an opportunity to kind of like wander back in time, because I mentioned Rome, I mentioned the Dark Ages earlier, but that my players have been sitting there going, there's how many pyramids in Egypt? And I can see them all like really imbibing the historical aspect of this. Like, they're staying at the Shepherd's Hotel. The Shepherd's Hotel is a real hotel, or was a real hotel. It was absolutely wonderful. Lawrence of Arabia himself stayed there. There are photos of the exterior and the interior, which I've been collecting. I've got a menu from the Shepherd's Hotel, which I have recreated as a prop. And it is this incredible cosmopolitan location. But in fact, Cairo in and of itself was very much like Paris, or even the Broadway at the time, because they were trying to emulate it. Egypt was having this own social revolution at the time, and they were all very pro-female and having pro-women movements and stuff, and even pro-gay and lesbian movements. And this is back 100 years ago, because they were having this movement here. They were coming out of almost the Dark Ages of their own, of, well, the Britons kind of like ruling over them. And when they come out the other end, they're like, what is our identity on the world stage? And I didn't know any of that. And it starts talking about the nightclubs that they have, and the dance routines that they have. And I'm like, this sounds fascinating. So for me, like, being able to play in that location, like, is almost like a little time machine. And I think it is for the players too. You get to, as best we can, absorb a little bit of 100 years ago, of a place that we didn't even know it used to be like that.
Yeah, and that's kind of the advantage of being able to play stuff that's in our world, is all that material is there. You just have to go find it, do the research, but you don't have to try to come up with it all yourself like you might if you were just homebrewing up your own fantasy world, or even your own modern world. Like, you would have to come up with that all on your own, and that's a lot of work. Whereas, if we're in 1920s Egypt, all that stuff is available online for the most part. You can go and find it and find all these wonderful details. What happened to the Shepherd Hotel? Did it get
just... I think it was like 1954, something like that. It got burned down in some local riots.
Oh, no.
And it was beautiful.
Bummer.
Too. I mean, it was your atypical, very sort of continental, multi-story, big, huge archways, the massive, huge interior garden come restaurant. It was otherworldly. It was just otherworldly. But yeah, it burned down. They rebuilt a Shepherd's Hotel, but it's not the same. It's modern, right? So it doesn't have any of that charm.
Yeah. Speaking of desert stuff, did you see Dune?
We have.
What did you like? What did you think? So wait, actually, before now, have you read the books?
No.
Were you a Dune? Okay. Did you see the David Lynch? Had you seen the David Lynch movie? Were you a fan? Not a fan? Yeah. Okay. So now, what did you think? I just wanted to get that context.
No, and I think it is good context, and I'm certainly not going to speak for everyone, but I freaking loved it. I loved it. I was all over it. So I think I have a perspective because I haven't read the books, and that is, I actually honestly thought that I would be confused potentially by the film, but I understood exactly what was going on. I understood the political plays that were going on, and I never got that from the David Lynch one, by the way, like, at all. And I thought that I don't know. I thought that the cinematography was out of this world. I thought the sound was out of this world. The vistas were just stunning. And I'm there, man. I mean, I'm living this. It was brilliant. I freaking loved it. It ranks way up there.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I loved it as much as you did. I certainly enjoyed it. It is beautiful. I'm in a weird spot because I just I've read the books, but it's been forever ago, so I don't have some like, oh, it's it's because I think this version does tend to be pretty close to the books as I remember them, as I actually have probably more heard people talking about them. I was a big fan of the David Lynch one, even though I know it's horribly flawed. I don't know. It's been one of those things that I could always just put on in the background or somewhere and watch. Just always kind of fun. I guess I hope they're able to tell the whole story because I felt like this movie was really long and didn't get that far into things, and pretty ballsy for them to release it without really getting the fact of doing the second movie kind of nailed down. Because I think when they released this one with the part one and then kind of it's just kind of over, that they actually had nailed down that they were going to make a second one. Thankfully, I think that they are going to make one. But I'm wondering how long is this movie? How long are these movies going to be to get everything? And then I just thought, as much as I enjoyed the visuals and things, I felt like there were some moments. It kind of reminds me a bit sometimes of, to bring it into kind of a role playing perspective where you can have those fun kind of sessions, but sometimes you get to the end of the session and you thought like, okay, we played for 3 hours and it was kind of fun. But then you think like, well, we didn't get very far. It was kind of fun. But then at the end, you're like, man, but I kind of wish we'd gotten further in what we were trying to do. And that's how I kind of felt at the end of this Dune movie. Like, well, that was good, but I feel like we didn't cover as much ground maybe as I was hoping we would. Having sat down for 3 hours or whatever.
I've heard that from a few sources now. And I think the Lynch movie or obviously reading the books, I think where this thing is going, and I don't. So I thought, to all intents and purposes, for me, 3 hours is going to wrap things up nicely. But you have it almost insider information, and that they need to take this much and get it into this much time, and you're wondering how they're going to do that. And I could see that being like a concern and sort of taking away from it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird too, because the other thing I was wary of is because I know the Lynch movie took a lot of liberties with things. So it's always that thing of, it's been so long since I read the books, I don't know what's in the books. And I was always like, I don't know if this is a Lynch thing or actually a Dune thing. So part of me was like, is that going to be in there? Or is that, I know like some stuff was definitely Lynch and then other stuff I wasn't so sure. So I was kind of in this weird box. There were just some things, and it's probably just me. I like the Mentats. In the newer movie, there's the one guy, and I forget the actor's name. He's kind of weird look. He's in it for like a minute. The kind of evil Mentat who's sort of with the Harkonnens, as they call them now. And then there's the other Mentat, and I forget who plays the actor on this one. And he only has one moment where his eyes roll back and he kind of calculates something. If you remember this one thing where the Duke asks him, like, how much money did it cost him to do something? And his eyes kind of roll back white, and it seems like he's thinking. It's not like in the Lynch movie, Mentats get a lot of play, but they just get more focused where they actually kind of name them and they sort of give you an idea of kind of their importance. And to see the characters, but then it seems like it didn't really matter because they don't really explain them as anybody. They're just like two guys, which is a little bit disappointing because I liked it, they just got some great stuff in the first one. And there were a couple of things like that, which I get it's kind of a weird thing because I get that they want to slim it down. And do we really need to know who the Mentats, the whole thing about the Mentats and other things? Probably not. But at the same time, it's like, man, you spent all this time. It'd be one thing if you had like slimmed it down and you're like, we got to cut this stuff off because we only have an hour, we only have an hour and a half, whatever, we're making this a really tight movie. But then I look back and go, man, it was 3 hours. And like, I get like Jason Momoa, you got to give him his action scenes. But it was like, man, I kind of wish that we would have gotten 5 minutes less Jason Momoa flying around the Arrakeen city and 5 minutes instead on like, let's see the Mentats. And I agree with Terrence here. I do miss the big Mentat eyebrows. I don't even remember for the Lynch movie, but the Mentats had these like massive, funny eyebrows. I didn't really love the look. I mean, the actors were great. what was his name? Brad Dourif was the evil Mentat Piter de Vries, and I forget the guy who was the Mentat for the Atreides, but he was also in he was in Krull, one of my other kind of I don't know, is Krull I was gonna say sort of guilty pleasure. I think Krull's a legitimate good movie. But yeah, Thufir Hawat, Phil, exactly. Thufir Hawat was in Krull. He was the old man who teaches the guy how to find the glaive in Krull and whatnot. Have you seen Krull from back in the day? Do you recall Krull, or am I?
Oh yeah, I remember Krull with the old Krull throwing star thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the what was it called? Shoot,
I was just
what was
looking up
the?
the Mentats actually.
Yeah, they were just kind of fun, and like they drank the juice of Sefu, so they had their stained lips, and they had some little. At one point, they show Brad Dourif, and you know, in the Lynch thing, it feels like a little bit of a waste of time. But it was those. I guess the thing that I feel about the Lynch film is as flawed as it was. My friends and I have spent probably the intervening 20 years quoting the Dune, you know, that Dune movie. It just was very quotable, and the new one, I don't know. In that way, I can't see my friends and I really repeating lines from this new Dune movie like we did. Mark, I don't know. Gaming talk. Hey, we only have 5 minutes left, so like I figured like we could talk about some other things. I'm happy to
But we
talk
will
about
be back next
stuff.
month, Mark. We will be back next
We
month, and
will
we will
always
talk
be
more
back
games.
with more gaming talk. I guess speaking of gaming talk, are you playing anything other than your Cthulhu game, or is that pretty much all the gaming that's on your schedule these days? Besides, obviously, the work you're doing.
No, for me, I'm running. Okay, so a couple of things. I'm running Masks of Nyarlathotep probably through to the end of January into February next year, without a doubt. And then we'll pick up with Jack Shadowrun, I suspect. But I am this Saturday starting a 5 Pacific Standard Time in a Gary Con sponsored event where Skeeter Green is running a scenario. We're going to be streaming it, and it is a modern day Call of Cthulhu, and I'm playing in that one. So watch out on my social media streams for details. So
Awesome.
that's coming up this weekend. And then, you know, offline, I actually picked up Forza 5 Horizons, and I've been playing that just from a computer game perspective. So that's what's going on with me.
But have you decided what you're going to play in Call of Cthulhu? Do you have an idea for who your character is going to be?
It was handouts. So it's like I've got like a girl called Wendy, I believe, and she is an attorney. And
does she have a fast food chain named after her?
not quite. But yeah, so we will find out more about her this coming Saturday.
Do you know the scenario? Is it a custom scenario, or is this one an official module?
Scenario. No, it's a custom scenario. I forget the exact name, but it's something like Madness at GaryCon or something like that. And it's basically it's based at GaryCon, and we as players are attending GaryCon, and then things happen. It's been written by Skeeter Green, and it's going to be next year's official GaryCon scenario, because they always do a scenario, and I'm doing the map for it. So yeah, Madness.
You haven't done the map yet, so you're not going to be. You don't have any insider intel from your map drawing for this.
Well, but that's the thing, right? So they do this every year. There is a floor plan of the convention, which is the lodge itself. I did the one a couple of years ago, and they always write a scenario around that. So when I drew the last one, it was ice caverns, but it's ice caverns shaped like the convention. So you can actually use it to get around the convention with it. Well, I'm going to do another one. It's going to be more Cthulhu themed. It's going to be dark horror, this one. But it's still going to be, you're going to get a printout when you attend the convention. Here's your poster. Here's your actual plan to get around the actual convention hall. But they take the labels off, and then plop a scenario into it. That's what Skeeter's doing.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so knowing the layout of the map doesn't help because it's just the GaryCon layout. I gotcha.
And as like attendees of GaryCon, we're just there to play. And so Skeeter will say you're in this particular room, you're playing a game, and something's going to happen. But now we've got the lodge plan, right? So we're probably going to use that to our advantage or disadvantage in moving around. So I suspect it's going to be bad shit is going to merge into this convention. So even though the floor plan's the same, the
Something
walls and everything,
rise out of Lake Geneva and sort of slough its way into the lodge.
who knows exactly?
Awesome. You don't have a link for that yet, right? Or is it just you'll post it to your? Because if you do,
yeah, I haven't seen links floating around. I'm going to assume that Pex is not still here because he would have it. But I do have. Yeah, this is. You know what? I'm going to drop this. Let me see if I can drop this into our personal chat here in Discord, if I may.
Yep, sure. Then I can paste it into the public chat.
How about that?
Let's see. All right, let's see if I can. Can I get this up on? Let's see. Let me just save it really quick, and then let's see if I can share it without killing the stream. That's one thing I've had is I had a couple times trying to share. Oh, you know what? Let me see if I can do this a different way. What to add a source? I don't know how to get it in the stream. I don't know how to do it. Well, actually, wait a minute. Oh, I think let me try this again. Riveting video.
Otherwise, maybe do a screen share and just chat because it's picture.
Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
I can't even.
I'm gonna get it. Where is it? It's in downloads. Okay. That's what I was trying to think about how to do the file directly, but yeah, I'm just going to open it up and then save that. Now I should be able to do that. Let's see. Here we go. Did that work? It will once I. There we go.
There you go. Nicely done. So yeah, this Saturday, 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern.
Oh, awesome! So there's a bunch of stuff running.
There's a bunch of things going on this Saturday. Yeah, I think it's worth looking at the 1 p.m. with Stefan Picorni, Chronicles of Bingo Shortwick. Then the Dread from Lake Geneva is what I'm going to be in. Zach Glazer's in there. Jennifer Glazer's in there. Jack Cole, my husband, is going to be in there. Scenario written by Luke Gygax and Skeeter Green. Come watch us, folks. It's going to be an absolute blast. Then if you have the energy and an old fart like myself, I don't, 9 o'clock at night till 1 o'clock in the morning, Vampire the Masquerade by none other than the very beautiful Satine Phoenix and Jameson Stone.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll just wrap it here. Anything else you'd like to plug or tell everybody about before we let you go?
I think this is it. On our next one, we'll talk about the geomorph tiles that I'm going to be working on.
Awesome. All right, Alyssa. Well, thanks as usual. We will see and hear you again in a month. Thanks everybody for joining the chat. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. And I'll talk to you.